Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Believe in Hawks episode. Hawks lose tonight to the Orlando Magic, 119-112, as this pretty much puts their chances of getting the 7th seed on life support, with Orlando needing can clinch tomorrow if they beat Boston. That's who they play tomorrow. So, but if not, and the Hawks win the next two games, then Sunday's game could become a winner-take-all for home court in the play-in. Biggest thing for the Hawks is just to stay at the worst, just so then you still have two chances to win one game instead of dropping to 9, where now you have to win 2 games to get into the postseason. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to get into that game. Obviously, guys, if you enjoyed the episode, subscribe to the channel, like the video. Follow me on xpricey_2K as well. So, yeah. So tonight's game, a lot of people obviously, again, pissed. We're at that point in the season, every Hawks loss pisses everybody off. Everybody crashes out, everything like that, right? This game definitely was a bit of a frustrating game. I think that the weaknesses that the Hawks have again showed themselves in this game. Orlando got things that they needed to happen go in their favor in this game. And so what you see from that perspective is because of that, Orlando was able to win this game and pretty much keep the Hawks at bay. And so this was the type of game where when I was watching it and as they go through it, I was kind of sitting here and I was like, this feels like a game where the Hawks are trying to stay in it, which means they're getting outplayed, but they're not getting outplayed to a point where they're out of it. But you know what I'm saying? There's just games you can watch and you can kind of feel it out and you can kind of tell. And, and they got within 5 in the fourth quarter, but again, the lack of shot making, hitting threes, and getting stops keeps them from being able to get over the hump. Hawks have had a lot of fake comebacks, as people call it, the last few games, and that's been a big issue. But also the roster deficiencies continue to show its ugly head for the Hawks as well. That continues to be a very, very big issue for this team. And so, I think that all of those things continue to just kind of build up, continue, like I said, to be an issue. And the Hawks are just right now, like I said, not in a great place and struggling to kind of figure it out. Tonight, if we look at some stats, Hawks shot 45% for the field. Orlando shot 50%. Hawks had hit 6 threes in that first quarter. They led after one quarter. They hit 6 threes. They had some shot making. They only made 8 for the rest of the game. So clearly you saw the shot making took a hit. Orlando hit the same amount of threes as the Hawks, but it felt bigger when they made them. They shot 41% because obviously they didn't take as many threes, but they hit, I think the threes they made came in key moments. Hawks actually won at the free throw line tonight. Orlando was not good. They missed 10 free throws tonight. So obviously if Orlando was better at the line, this game could have been much worse. Hawks had 25 assists to Orlando's 23. Orlando had 43 total rebounds to Atlanta's 41. 5 fast break points for the Hawks. Clearly, that has to be different. If the Hawks, especially against the type of defensive team that Orlando is, they're going to have some success against that defense, against what Orlando likes to do. They have to be able to score in transition. And Orlando did a fantastic job tonight of limiting the Hawks from doing that. And that put them more in half court, which is more Orlando's style and more on how Orlando likes to play, which allows them to then show and give more of their physicality as well, which the Hawks had an issue with tonight. But I'll also get into how officiating was not good either tonight. Again, another game where I made mention. Hawks are usually not officiated well anyway, but then they play a physical team and it just feels like it expedites itself. So Hawks tonight, 5 faster points. Hawks, usually a really good stealing team tonight, almost got doubled up by Orlando. Orlando had 13 steals to the Hawks 7. Hawks had 18 turnovers tonight. When the Hawks have high turnover, that usually doesn't bode well for this team. Hawks actually winning on the offensive boards 14-13 tonight against them. And Orlando had, with those 18 turnovers, 20 points off of turnovers. So the numbers kind of tell that bit of the story. But as I've mentioned, physicality was also a big issue tonight. It was one of those games where you could just, when you play a physical team, sometimes you can tell the Hawks it's not equal. And we've had episodes this year of the pod where I've talked about like clearly this isn't equal. Clearly one team has the officiating advantage. This was another game. This is the second game in this series, which Orlando has won both, where they've had the officiating advantage. Now, in saying that, Hawks did go to the line 22 times. So I'm not saying the Hawks didn't get to the line, or it was like 31-6 or anything like that. But you can tell they were letting Orlando play a little bit more physically than the Hawks could play. Hawks had some major foul trouble in the first half. Trey had 3 fouls. Zach had 3 fouls. And Mo Gay had 3 fouls as well. Hawks, I believe, totally tonight had 26 fouls to Orlando's 20. Like I said, it was one of those games where, that they knew coming into the game, coming into an Orlando Magic game, physicality will be at the forefront. They will be a physical ball club with you. They're going to push. They're going to shove. Because Ime Udoka had a great quote the other night. He basically said, you play physical and make the refs have to adjust to calling you. So almost in a way where refs now know a team's physical, but because they're so used to the physicality in the way they're physical, they're not as quick to blow the whistle. And so now he's basically like, the refs would have to change the way they want to call the game to be able to get calls against them, right? And Orlando's obviously, like I said, the closest thing to, I would say, Houston in terms of their makeup, in terms of how they're trying to be. Obviously not in terms of star players, because those are two different sides of the coin, but very strong defensively, and that's what they lean on. Hawks obviously knew that's obviously a tougher game. Remember, the Hawks are a very small team right now, and they're a very light team right now. So they have to exert more effort to work through the physicality and have to hope that their skill can overwhelm Orlando and be able to take advantage of whenever they get opportunities. Orlando, early in the game, trapped Trey a lot. And this is, again, something that teams are going to do. They're going to force Atlanta to shoot. Houston did it twice. Teams are going to say, Atlanta, if you want to beat us, you have to make threes. That is something that has been a very big issue for the Hawks in the last few weeks because of inconsistency. Obviously, like I mentioned tonight, you had 6 in the first quarter. You had 8 for the rest of the game. So, it's one of those things where when you needed it later, you couldn't really get it. You're basically ravaging about 2 to 3 a quarter. And Orlando was able to kind of just, again, use their size to their advantage. Paolo and Franz, we know what they do. They're both 6'10", so they're bigger than most players that are guarding them. And then, like Franz, he's not even like a center. So you're having to put Dyson on him because that's just the way matchups are lining up as well. So, that obviously was tough, from that perspective, from that matchup. Paolo continues to have great games against the Hawks. Obviously, that's been big as well. I do want to touch on the front court because some people mention this as well. Again, there's been a big discussion in the community about Onyeka Okongwu. I've talked about it on the podcast before about what I think of Onyeka's situation. I've mentioned that we don't really realize what Onyeka is doing with the lack of front court help that he has. I think some people are so ready to say he's not good enough, but don't realize the man has no front court help. Gay had foul trouble in the first half, and in general, they don't play him a lot. Barlow is someone they're clearly trying to take out of the rotation. So really, you're playing a 9-man rotation with 2 bigs. That's what you're playing with. And that obviously can be very tough when you go against bigger teams like Orlando. Regardless of all of that, Onyeka Okongwu had 30 points tonight, 14 rebounds. Again, showing even against bigger teams, he can impact the game, he can play, especially when he doesn't have a lot of front court support. We ended the game with Terrence Mann at the 4 again. I don't know what you want me to say. I can't blame Onyeka Okongwu for the front court shortcomings if that's who you're giving him at the 4. And listen, I'll touch on that too. I was not a fan of pulling Zach when they pulled him in the 4th quarter. I felt like in that type of game, especially because he had foul trouble, so he hadn't played a lot. I was just like, I feel like you need to stick with Zach there. Even if Zach doesn't give you anything, I just feel like for his size, and I know Zach's a lighter player, so he's not as big and strong as you would like him to be in that situation, but his size, that's what I would want. Because Orlando, when you had that league kind of close together, is when you had a rotation on the floor where you had Zach on the floor and them. You took him off the floor, Orlando was able to kind of get the lead back up because they were able to just say, okay, now we could just attack their smaller players and et cetera. And that's happened in a few games this year where the Hawks go small and teams are just able to attack it. And so, excuse me, I was not a fan of that. I will say that about that. I've never been always 100% pleased with every decision Quinn makes. Obviously, we had a big firing in NBA today. Michael Malone gets fired from the Denver Nuggets, and they're a top 4 seed right now in the Western Conference. And, you know, I'm seeing all these Denver fans come out and talk about what he did wrong and what may have led to this decision. And my point with that is just, I'll say this again, no coach is perfect. Even winning coaches make decisions that fans aren't happy about. There's no perfect coach that's out there. Like, there isn't. So we got to get out of our head that, like, that's the case. Yes, okay, should you criticize Quinn Snyder when he makes a bad decision? Sure, that is completely fine. For everybody who wants to fire Quinn Snyder this year, that's not going to happen. Now, for anybody who is on the fire Quinn Snyder train for next year, I will say this. Next year will probably be the first year with his tenure of Atlanta where there is pressure. Because remember, usually a coaching cycle gets about 3 full years. Quinn, this is technically his second full year. He's coached for, 2.5 years, this team. This is his second full year as the Atlanta Hawks head coach. He's entering his third full year next year. The Hawks will have expectations next year because with the development of Dyson and Zach and probably some of the changes you're making and getting Jalen back, I would think as an organization, you feel like the next step would be have a winning season, get into the postseason as a top 6 seed. That would probably be your next step. So Quinn will be under some pressure next year to do that. Obviously, health plays a big part, and we'll see what they do this offseason to fix some of the problems that they have. But that's just something to, for all my people who want Quinn gone, if that's probably music to your ears right now. But if you want him gone now, that's just not going to happen because they also understand second year, we're still developing. Why am I firing a coach while we openly admit we're developing, whatever. So that's that. But I would have stuck with Rishi Shea down the stretch. But yeah, so like I said, as I mentioned, yes, Yeka doesn't have front court help. That's a big issue. That's been a bbig problem. Even that, he had a very strong game tonight. Also, when you play Orlando, if you're the Hawks, ball security is usually big issues. I mentioned they had 18 turnovers, and Magic also had 31 free throw attempts. That's kind of not the formula you need to beat Orlando, along with them hitting some shots and outplaying your bench. Caris LeVert had 13 points tonight. The rest of the Hawks bench, I think, had 12. The bench scoring is so big for this team. Like bench scoring is extremely important for this team, for them to win. When they were winning games, bench scoring was really good. You can't have the bench scoring you had tonight if you're going to win certain games. That's just not how it's going to go for this team. They have to be able to get production from their bench for them to win games. This team is slowly converting back to the team of yesteryear, which is last year, because where they're kind of in a position where they kind of have to outscore every team because they just aren't good enough defensively right now to do it. And I tweeted out during the game, I said, man, I miss pre-injury Jalen Johnson, like pre his injury, because when the Hawks were at full strength, they actually could defend at a level that would keep them in games. So even if the offense wasn't great, they could still be in a low-scoring, ugly game and win some of those games. With the injury to Jalen and the changes they've had to make to this team, trading Hunter and et cetera, they are now unable to do that realistically. Now you're going to see teams that are not great offensively have strong offensive games against the Hawks. So you're kind of back where you started, where you have to score if you're the Hawks to win games. And that's not ideal. When you had your full complement of bigs, Clint, Okongwu, Jalen, your wings, Dyson, DeAndre, Zach, You had some size, you had some defense, you had wing defenders. Now you've eliminated Hunter, you've eliminated Clint, and you've eliminated Jalen. 3 very big parts of that on the defensive end. And you've had to place him with Niang, a negative defender. LeVert's okay. He's not terrible, but he's not like fantastic either. Terrence Mann is average defensively. So like you really did not improve at all defensively when you made the trades. But you were trying to replace some of the offensive production that you lost with Jalen and DeAndre. Right? And listen, Karis LeVert has not been as great as DeAndre Hunter at times. There are times where Karis is really good, and there's times where he just doesn't give you much, and that hurts the team at times. So obviously, I've mentioned it when we're talking about the offseason. I've said, listen, the Kings pick is one of the biggest things that Hawks fans are keeping an eye on right now, because if they get that pick, now that Lakers pick becomes a very tradable pick. Do you package that pick with a Niang, with a man, or even both to try to acquire a player? That's going to be something the Hawks will have to entertain and look at this offseason. You also have looming extensions for Trey and Dyson. Dyson will probably sign his. We'll see what Trey does. And like I said, you got to also make a decision on your front court. Is Mo Gay going to play next year? If that is what y'all are going with next year, Mo Gay as your backup 4, because I would assume, even though he's been playing some backup center, I think he's done well, because I think it just allows him to anchor a defense, and it allows him to use his rim protection as a strength, because that is his strength of his game, is he can protect the rim. Where playing the 4 is kind of like a little different. You're kind of like weak side protecting the paint, where the center position for Gay, he can kind of just anchor it. You got to decide, okay, first, is he going to be your backup 4 or 5? And then whatever you decide he's going to be, you then acquire another player at that other position that with some size. Because clearly size is an issue. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you about that. Size is an issue. I don't think that's an Onyeka issue. I just think that you don't have much around him. And so you need to address that, right? And so that is something you have to look into. And like I said, health. Got to be healthy next year. So, right now, I still think the Hawks will get into the postseason. Now, they drop to the 9th seed. That changes a little bit. But if they can stay 7-8, I definitely think they can still hop into the postseason. And I think they can get into a playoff series. And realistically, for this team and way this organization is building this roster and building the organization, they're kind of like, listen, we got to the postseason. Why would we look at this as a failure of the season? Because some fans are going to look at this as a failure of the season. Some fans are going to look at this as a failure on everybody's part. But they're going to look at it like, okay, yes, it didn't end the way we wanted to. We had an unfortunate injury. But we still made the postseason. We had a better win record than a lot of people projected us to have. And we found guys who are now part of our core that we feel very good about and confident in. Those are the 3 takeaways that the front office is probably going to take from the season. And now you just continue to build with that. You continue to build. You continue with continuity, etc. So something else as well to kind of keep a look at. But like I said, what we have right now with the Hawks is what we have. I'm not going to trip. I'm not going to go crazy. That's why I don't come on this podcast. Like, yeah, there's days I'm frustrated for sure. But I don't come on this podcast and I'm just like, team sucks, fire everybody, I hate everybody. Like, no. Like, I'm not going to do that. That's not me. Because I understand the set of circumstances that this team has and where they are. I know what's going on. All right. I know the flaws of this team, the weaknesses of this team. I know what they have to do to win games. And I know if they don't do those things, they will probably lose. You play the Nets and the Sixers next. Nets beat you last time. So that's by no means an easy game. No means. That's going to be a tough game for you. Sixers should win that game. They have everybody out. Hawks have been able to take care of business against this team twice. They should be able to sweep the season series and get that win. Orlando, if they lock up that 7th spot, we'll see if they feel the need to play their starters against the Hawks, knowing, especially if the Hawks get that 8th spot, they'll play them again in a few days anyway. So that could be a win based off that. Does that make Quinn maybe want to sit his guys? Obviously, if the Bulls still have a chance to get the 7th seed, you're going to have the starters play. Not 7th seed, 8th seed, you're going to have the starters play. And then they just have to take comparisons against Orlando's second and third units. But, a lot of the season is going to be dictated by some different things. So, they do the back-to-back against the Nets and the Sixers and then play again on Sunday. So, yeah, that's kind of where we stand with the team, right? Like I said, I'm not really too crazy about things because I understand, like I said, what's going on and so on and so forth. So that's just my take on what's happened as we get close to the end of the season for the Hawks. Not going to go crazy. But to actually end this podcast back on some other NBA news, I mentioned Michael Malone was fired. I just want to give my thoughts on that firing. We've had Mike Brown get fired. We've had Taylor Jenkins get fired. Jenkins and Malone, both teams firmly in the postseason, top 6 seed, getting fired, right? And a lot of people are trying to figure out what's going on with NBA head coaches. They're trying to figure out why are teams that are like good record in the playoffs firmly getting fired. And this is the latest, I think, an NBA coach has been fired since like 1980. So, like, why are you firing him the last week of the season? And here's my takeaway. I think what you're seeing is when you get to a certain level of success, even when you're winning, it shows that winning doesn't solve everything. Because if you still hate people, if people still ain't like some teams are just good enough where they can win games but hate their head coach. Like that happens in this league. Like you don't really buy into what your head coach is telling you, but like you're still able to win games. And Denver hasn't had the greatest stretch of games recently, right? They haven't been playing well recently. And some people have wondered about, is Malone's message still getting to the players? Are players starting to tune him out? We come out here today that the GM and the coach, Malone and the GM, did not get along, and that they really didn't talk to one another. Does any of that play a part in this? We're here seeing reports that they hope that this gives a jolt to the team. It's interesting that to me is something they're thinking, like, oh, I hope that us firing our front office and our head coach gets this team to play better. Does that very much signal a disconnect between the coach and the players? Maybe. Obviously Denver has some roster deficiencies, and so that obviously impacts some things when you do, but still, again, winning record. And like I said, I just think too, teams are just like, hey, listen, if we're not happy with the state of operations from the coach to GM or whatever, regardless of what the record says and what our team is doing, we'll make a change. Because I think that's what's been so unusual about it. It's just they're doing it while the season is still going on. It's one thing if they said, hey, after the season, we're going to cut our ties. We feel like we need to change. Okay. People will be like, okay. Even people would still question it because like, oh, wait, you made the playoffs. Blah, blah, blah. But doing it now, like, it sounds like this completely blindsided everybody. Like, this was not something that people were thinking or there were rumblings that this was going to happen. It seems like this is something that and you've noticed this even with the Lakers thing, a lot of secret conversation, and a lot of secret dialogue, and a lot of secret thought processes going on. And so, and then you get a decision out of the blue and you're just like, what? You have some really good coaches on the market this offseason for some teams that need them. I would not be shocked if you see some of these coaches just flip teams. Like, I would not be surprised to see Taylor Jenkins coaching Denver next year. I would not be shocked at all. Because he has not done anything to me to show me he should not be an NBA head coach next year. Same thing with Michael Malone. He's a championship coach. You know, I mean, obviously we'll have to see what's available for them and see who else fires their coach, but I would not be shocked. And so right now, I wonder if coaches around the league are like, dude, we're good, but I don't know if that's enough to save my job. Like, that may be something that's echoed to other coaches, and some people are going to ask questions about. So it's just interesting that it happened. We obviously, every time a firing happens, you hear rumors. Taylor Jenkins got fired. Well, John Morant didn't like the offense, and the ball was getting taken out of his hands. Does the players have that much of an impact on that, regardless of team success? Maybe, but yeah. So that's my 2 cents. But I think that's about it here for the Believe the Hawks podcast. I appreciate you guys tuning in for another episode. If you enjoy the episode, subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment down below. If you're listening to audio, leave a rating and review. Available on any podcast platform available out there for people to want to listen. Follow me on X, Bricey_2K, BRICEY_2K for all my takes on the Hawks. And yeah, so like I said, Hawks lose tonight to Orlando. Got to get ready to play again on Thursday. Nothing else to really tell you guys, man. We just got to get ready to play again on Thursday and try to hold off Chicago and Miami for the 8th seed. So it's your boy Bryce Lewis. We'll see you next time.